All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to get into something that's really the bedrock of the entire accounting world, the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. You know, if you've ever wondered what keeps our whole financial system from just imploding, well, this code is a huge part of the answer. It's basically the ethical compass for every single CPA. So let's take a look at how it works.
Seriously, just stop and think about this for a minute. Why on earth do we trust accountants with literally billions, sometimes trillions of dollars? We're talking about the financial guts of our biggest companies, our own retirement money, even entire governments. So why do we do it? What's really stopping someone from just, cooking the books?
Well, it all boils down to this one thing, this incredibly powerful framework. And this isn't just some dusty old book of suggestions, okay? It's a collective promise. A promise to serve the public, to protect trust, and to always act with integrity. Honestly, you could argue that the credibility of our entire financial system is built on this very foundation.
Okay, so how does this ethical compass actually point the way? Well, it all starts with a set of core principles. And I want you to think of these less like, nitpicky rules and more like the big guiding ideas. They're the moral North Star for the entire profession. You see, the principles are the why behind all the rules. There are 6 of them, and they tackle the big question, why should I act a certain way? They cover things like responsibilities, the public interest, due care, the whole shebang. But for today, we're going to zoom in on a couple of the most crucial ones.
And listen to the language the code uses here. It's really powerful. This isn't just some casual advice. It's a formal declaration. It says that integrity is absolutely essential to maintain and broaden public confidence. I mean, just imagine having that level of responsibility on your shoulders every single day. So, what does all that fancy language actually mean when you're on the job? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. It means be honest and candid even when it's tough. Do what's right, not what's easy. And absolutely, positively, never put your own personal gain ahead of the public's trust. This right here, this is the bedrock of the entire code.
This brings us to one of the most critical distinctions in the whole code. And hey, if you're studying for the CPA exam, listen up, because this is a big one. It's the difference between objectivity and independence. Now, objectivity is a state of mind. You got to have it for all services. But independence, that's a whole other level. It's a much stricter standard that applies only to specific jobs, like audits and reviews, where you have to be free from conflicts, not just in fact, but also in appearance.
Yeah, this idea of independence is so important that it basically moves us from the why, the principles, to the how, the actual concrete rules. And trust me, there is no rule bigger or more critical to get right than the independence rule itself.
So the first thing you need to get is that the independence rule doesn't just apply to the main auditor on the job. No. It applies to a whole group of people the code calls covered members. We're talking the engagement team, anyone who can influence that team, certain partners in the firm, even the firm itself. The bottom line is, the net here is cast very, very wide. Okay, quick pop quiz. Let's make this real. You're a covered member on an audit. Your spouse lands a massive promotion and is now the CEO of that exact same client. Does that mess with your independence? What do you think?
Oh yeah, 100% yes. The rules here are absolutely crystal clear. If an immediate family member, like your spouse, is in a key position at an attest client, your independence is impaired. Period. There's no gray area there at all. All right, let's try another one. You're getting ready to kick off this year's audit, but you're looking at the books and you realize, wait a minute, the client never paid us for last year's audit. Are you still independent? Can you go ahead with the new audit?
The answer is a hard no. The code has a very specific bright line rule for exactly this. If professional fees are still unpaid for more than 1 year, your independence is gone. It's impaired. And why is that? Well, think about it. It basically makes you a lender to your own client, and that is a massive conflict of interest. So we've seen the big guiding principles, and we've seen some of the black and white rules, but what happens when you run into a situation that isn't explicitly spelled out in the rulebook? How do you handle those tricky, ethical gray areas? Well, this is where something called the conceptual framework comes into play, and I absolutely love this analogy for it. It's like an ethical GPS. When the roadmap of specific rules just ends,
The framework gives you a step-by-step process to find your way and make the right call.
And honestly, it's a surprisingly simple 3-step process. Step 1, you identify any potential threats that could mess with your ethics. Step 2, you evaluate just how serious those threats are. And step 3, if the threat is significant, you have to apply safeguards to either eliminate it completely or, at the very least, knock it down to an acceptable level.
So what kinds of threats are we even talking about here? Well, the code lays out 7 main categories. You've got things like a self-interest threat, where you might benefit financially, or a familiarity threat, where you're maybe just a little too close and chummy with the client. The most important first step is just being able to recognize and name the pressure you're actually up against.
Okay, so once you've identified a threat and you've decided it's significant, you can't just shrug and move on. You have to actively fight back against it. And your weapon in this fight is what the code calls a safeguard. So what are safeguards? They're really just actions or policies that are designed to reduce or get rid of these threats. They can come from the profession itself, like regulations. They can be put in place by your firm, or they can even exist at the client's company. But, and this is super important, the code is very, very clear on one thing. You can never rely only on the client's own safeguards to protect your integrity. That's just not enough.
All right, let's pull all of this together. When you step back and look at the principles, the rules, and this framework, you start to see that the AICPA code isn't just a list of don'ts. It's a complete system, a whole guide designed to help accountants make tough decisions and uphold that incredibly important public trust. Now, before we wrap this up, there is one last absolutely critical point to hammer home. That conceptual framework, the ethical GPS we talked about, it's a powerful tool for sure, but it is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. You can never use it to justify breaking a specific black and white rule that already exists in the code. The rules always come first.
You know, the easiest way to remember all this is probably to think of it as a 3-part structure. The principles are the why, the big ideas. The rules are the what, the specific do's and don'ts. And the framework is the how-to guide for all those messy gray areas. All 3 pieces work together for one single purpose: to earn and to keep the public's trust.
And that really brings us to a final thought. The AICPA gives accountants this incredibly detailed ethical compass. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? No matter what you do for a living, what are the principles that guide you? What's actually written on your own professional compass? It's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.